Headlines. A total of 25 Filipinos extracted from war-torn Ukraine to Moldova are now waiting to be repatriated home. This is according to the Department of Foreign Affairs reported Thursday night.
The United States will impose new sanctions on Russian oligarchs, including a travel ban, Joe Biden announces at a cabinet meeting in the White House. The United States and its European allies intend to inflict financial pain on the Russian elite as a way to get to Putin, who has made himself all-powerful during 2 decades in power and seemingly invulnerable to outside pressure.
Vietnam evacuated some 460 Vietnamese citizens from Ukraine to neighboring countries. The Vietnamese Foreign Ministry said this on Wednesday. A total of 25 Filipinos extracted from war-torn Ukraine to Moldova are now waiting to be repatriated home. This is according to the Department of Foreign Affairs, and this was reported Thursday night. The 25 left Moldova for Bucharest, Romania, through the assistance of the Philippine Embassy in Hungary and Honorary Consul in Chisinau, Victor Gania. Of this number, 21 are crew members of bulk carrier MVS Breeze that had been on dry dock in the port of Odessa, Ukraine, and since January 27, 2022. The DFA said the Filipinos would depart Romania on Sunday for Dubai, where they will fly home via a Philippine Airlines flight. The group is expected to arrive in Manila by Tuesday. And in a virtual forum, Philippine Ambassador to Hungary, Francima Franca, estimated that around 200 Filipino seafarers are still stranded in various port cities in Ukraine, including Odessa, Kornomorsk, and Zine, among others. Simafra said the embassy is monitoring them, but he acknowledged that these seafarers cannot easily abandon their ships, especially those on board vessels where the crew members are all Filipino. And the envoy said their evacuation would have to be coordinated with their respective manning agencies, but if there are bankers in the port, relocation is advisable.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Moscow on Friday of resorting to nuclear terror and wanting to repeat the Chernobyl disaster after he said invading Russian forces shot at a nuclear power plant. Take a look.
Зупинити російських військових негайно, кричить своїм політикам. Україна – це 15 атомних блоків. Якщо буде вибух, це кінець всім, кінець Європі, це евакуація Європи. Тільки негайні дії Європи можуть зупинити російські війська. Не допустіть загибелі Європи від катастрофи на атомній станції.
Europe's largest nuclear power plant was on fire Friday after Russian strikes hit the Ukrainian facility, with the country's foreign minister demanding an immediate ceasefire at the site to avoid disaster. Russia has intensified strikes across the country, with fresh reports of civilian casualties and devastating damage, even as Moscow agreed to a Ukrainian request for humanitarian corridors to allow terrified residents to flee.
And IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi said the situation in Ukraine is unprecedented and stressed that safety and security of nuclear facilities and nuclear and other radioactive material in Ukraine must under no circumstances be endangered. And addressing an IAEA Board of Governors meeting on Ukraine today, Grossi said he continues to be gravely concerned by the situation in Ukraine, as this is the first time a military conflict is happening amidst the facilities of a large and established nuclear power program. Take a look.
The situation in Ukraine is unprecedented, and I continue to be gravely concerned. It is the first time a military conflict is happening amidst the facilities of a large established nuclear power program, which in this case also include the site of the 1986 accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The safety and security of nuclear facilities and nuclear and other radioactive material in Ukraine must, under no circumstances, be endangered. Despite the extraordinary circumstances of an armed conflict causing increasing challenges and dangers, Ukraine's nuclear power plants are operating normally. But while we may use expressions like normal operations in a technical context, I want to emphasize that there is nothing normal about the circumstances under which the professionals at the 4 nuclear power plants are managing to keep the reactors that produce half of Ukraine's electricity working. It is of critical importance that the armed conflict and activities on the ground around Zaporozhye nuclear power plant and any other of Ukraine's nuclear facilities in no way interrupts or endangers the facilities or the people working at or around them. But the best action to ensure the safety and security of Ukraine's nuclear facilities and its people would be for this armed conflict to end.
He added that there must be secure off-site power supply from the grid for all nuclear sites and uninterrupted logistical supply chains and transportation to and from the sites. Grossi also said that there must be effective on-site and off-site radiation monitoring systems and emergency preparedness and even response measures, as well as reliable commissions with the regulator and even others.
U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday urged Russia to stop its military activities at a Ukrainian nuclear power plant and to allow in emergency services. Biden joined Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in urging Russia to cease its military activities in the area and allow firefighters and emergency responders to access the site, a White House readout of a call between 2 leaders said. Russian troops attacked the Ukrainian nuclear plant, Europe's largest, early Friday local time, with images on a live feed showing blasts lighting up the night sky and sending up fumes of smoke. A senior U.S. official said the latest information shows no indications of elevated levels of radiation and we're monitoring closely. Russia's attack on the plant drew swift international outcry, with the UN's atomic watchdog warning of severe danger if the reactors were hit, and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson accusing Russian President Vladimir Putin of endangering all of Europe.
And head of Stockholm's International Peace Institute, or SIPRI, Dan Smith, says Russia's use of nuclear weapons would inflict unprecedented damage at a global scale after Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered Russia's nuclear forces be put on high alert. Let's take a look.
I think it's very difficult for us to read the real significance of the decision over the nuclear weapons being put on alert. 2 weeks ago, I would have said, this is just rhetoric and don't take it seriously. But I think that what has happened in the last 2 weeks, the invasion and the use of this extraordinary force against cities and civilian areas in Ukraine, makes one wonder whether any of the rules of the road that we have taken for granted for so long are still to be respected. I think it barely matters where the weapons are located, and it almost barely matters the details. They have over 2,000 operationally deployed warheads, and that is enough to inflict totally unprecedented damage on a global scale. It's beyond what is imaginable. That the emphasis is on using the nuclear threat to be sure, or try to be sure, that there will be no further, more active Western intervention and support for Ukraine than there already is. The other possibility which has been raised, but I can't really see it happening, would be for very localized use of nuclear weapons, or maybe just one or two within Ukraine, for a total effect, to use a phrase, shock and awe, to just try to bring that war to an end.
Moscow has the world's largest arsenal of nuclear weapons and a huge cache of ballistic missiles, which form the backbone of the country's deterrence forces. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, now in its 8th day, has driven 1 million Ukrainians from their homes and plunged Russia into deepening isolation as a global pariah in the worlds of finance, diplomacy, and even sports.
The United States will impose new sanctions on Russian oligarchs, including a travel ban, Joe Biden announces at a cabinet meeting in the White House. The United States and its European allies intend to inflict financial pain on the Russian elite as a way to get to Putin, who has made himself all-powerful during 2 decades in power and seemingly invulnerable to outside pressure. Take a look.
Today, I'm announcing that we're adding dozens of names to the list, including one of Russia's wealthiest billionaires, and I'm banning travel to America by more than 50 Russian oligarchs, their families, and their close associates.
The oligarchs, government officials, and business owners who have amassed vast wealth in an economy where only Putin loyalists can get ahead are seen as vulnerable because much of their wealth is tied to Western interests.
And on the 7th and 8th days of fighting, Russian forces take the Black Sea port of Kherson in southern Ukraine, the first major city to fall after a striking of setbacks for Moscow. They also pound the besieged port city of Mariupol, which is without water or even power. 33 people die after Russian forces hit residential areas, including schools, in the northern Ukrainian city of Chernihiv. And let's take a look.
Я слышав, що дороги замініровані. Ну, хто їх мінірував, я не був там і не бачив. Так що не можу сказати, хто іменно. А чув таке, що по полях їздити не можна, все замінірувано.
Ми відновимо кожний будинок, кожну вулицю, кожне місто і говоримо Росії: вчить слова репарації та контрибуції. Ви відшкодуєте усе нам, що зробили проти нашої держави, проти кожного українця в повному обсязі. А тих, хто загинув, ми не забудемо.
Мелітополь, Україна! Мелітополь, Україна! Мелітополь, Україна!
считаю чрезвычайно неправильным, абсолютно неразумным и неоправданным нападение российских войск на Украину. Нападать на независимое государство категорически неприемлемо. Так делать нельзя просто никогда, от слова совсем.
Но обращаю ваше внимание, что это в голове западных политиков постоянно вертится ядерная война, а не в голове россиян.
Сегодня нас просто хотели уничтожить.
Meanwhile, UN-led efforts to ramp up support to the country's embattled health workers have continued, with the first shipments of life-saving supplies arriving in neighboring Poland. Initial concerns about a lack of medicines to treat chronic conditions such as diabetes have given way to an alert that people will die if they do not get oxygen and other supplies for emergency care, said Dr. Mike Ryan, head of the World Health Organization's Emergencies Program. Let's listen in.
As I said, so humanitarian access, corridors, moments of peace, anything that can be done to create a situation where we can move supplies, move patients, move other things will be hugely beneficial at this point. But right now, in the chaos of what's happening there, it's very hard to see how that can be achieved in the coming days. And that's why the tragedy unfolding for the people of Ukraine is so avoidable and so unnecessary. Just last week there was about 2,000 people on oxygen, high-flow oxygen for COVID in Ukraine. There's 2,000 people that need oxygen to survive, and that number, you know, it hasn't changed. And in fact, if anything, that number has gone up because we have people with injuries, people undergoing surgery who need oxygen. We have children with childhood pneumonia. We have women in difficulties in labour. So oxygen is not just life-saving in COVID. Oxygen is life-saving, full stop. And you need it when you need it. You can't wait till tomorrow for oxygen. You can't wait till next week. You can't be put on a waiting list for oxygen. You can't stand in a queue for oxygen. Oxygen saves your life right now. And when you need it, you need it. Anytime you disrupt a society like this and put literally millions of people on the move, then infectious diseases will exploit that. People are packed together, they're stressed, and they're not eating, they're not sleeping properly. They're highly susceptible to the impacts of, first of all, of being infected themselves, and it's much more likely that disease will spread. So what might be for the rest of the world a inverted commas mild variant could be a very different experience for someone who is in that situation. And we see this all the time in refugees. We see this all the time around the world. We see this in the Middle East, we see this in Africa. The consequences of infectious disease in displaced people, in refugees who've been, as I said, on the move, overcrowded, stressed, without proper nutrition or sleep. Infectious diseases exploit that. So there's no question that the disease, COVID-19, will exploit that in the coming weeks.
The World Health Organization, or WHO, said the shipment of life-saving medical supplies has arrived in Warsaw for delivery to Ukraine. WHO's Emergency Medical Teams Network leader Flavio Salillo said 36 tons of supplies arrived from the organization's warehouse in Dubai and more in EN wrote as the need continues rising across Ukraine. Let's take a look.
I'm here in Poland where 36 metric tons of medical supplies have just landed, destined for Ukraine. We have surgical supplies to treat the wound, as well as medicine for all other diseases that do not stop for work. The supplies will be moved into truck to the border with Ukraine and then further to support the affected health system.
Representative in Ukraine, Jarno Habik, said that as the situation evolves, it is becoming harder to distribute the goods within Ukraine. He also says it is uncertain whether the supplies can reach where they are most needed in the country's health system. The WHO says new cases of coronavirus infection have been declining in Ukraine since February.
UN High Commissioner for Refugees Filippo Grandi said in just 7 days, 1 million people have fled Ukraine, uprooted by this senseless war, and stressed that peace is the only way to halt this tragedy. Let's listen in.
In just 7 days, 1 million people have fled Ukraine, uprooted by this senseless war. I have worked in refugee emergencies for almost 40 years, and rarely have I seen an exodus as rapid as this one. Hour by hour, minute by minute, more people are fleeing the terrifying reality of violence. Countless have been displaced inside the country. And unless there is an immediate end to the conflict, millions more are likely to be forced to flee Ukraine. Inside Ukraine, our staff and other humanitarians are working where and when they can, in frightening conditions. Our staff stay, even at great risk, because we know the needs in the country are huge. Despite the extraordinary pace and challenges, the response from governments and local communities in receiving this 1 million refugees has been remarkable. UNHCR staff have already surged throughout the region and are scaling up our protection and assistance programs for refugees in support of host governments. International solidarity has been heartwarming. But nothing can replace the need for the guns to be silenced, for dialogue and diplomacy to succeed. Peace is the only way to halt this tragedy.
Nearly 250 people have been killed since the start of the Russian onslaught on 24th of February. The UN Human Rights Office, OHCHR, reported on Thursday. The victims include 31 men, 27 women, 6 boys and 3 girls, as well as 174 adults and 8 children whose sex is yet unknown. Meanwhile, 553 people have been injured. OHCHR believes that real figures are considerably higher, especially in government-controlled territory and particularly in recent days due to delays in information from areas where intense fighting is taking place. The UN office added that Ukraine's Ministry of Health has reported 352 persons killed and more than 1,680 injured.
Now, in other reports, Singapore will impose sanctions on Russia over its invasion of Ukraine, including blocking financial transactions. and even the export of items that can be used as weapons against Ukrainians. This is according to the government said on Monday. The Asian city-state joins others, including the US, EU, Britain, Canada, Japan, Australia, and Taiwan, in imposing economic sanctions against Russia as global leaders seek to ramp up pressure on the Kremlin. And Singapore rarely imposes sanctions on other countries without a decision from the United Nations Security Council. Minister for Foreign Affairs Vivian Balakrishnan told Parliament. But given the unprecedented gravity of Russia's attack, he said Singapore intends to act to in concert with many other like-minded countries to impose appropriate sanctions and restrictions against Russia. And Balakrishnan also cited Russia's blocking of a draft Security Council resolution, deploring its aggression in Ukraine as a reason for the move. Singapore will impose export controls on items that can be used as weapons to harm Ukrainians and block certain Russian banks and financial transactions connected to Russia. And the specific measures are being worked out and will be announced soon, and this is according to Balakrishnan. Singapore Airlines, the city-state's flag carrier, also announced Monday that it has suspended flights between Singapore and Moscow due to the operational reasons. Most EU airlines, including Air France, have suspended their flights to Russian airports or through Russian airspace, and European Union has closed its airspace to Russian aircraft.
Meanwhile, Vietnam evacuated some 460 Vietnamese citizens from Ukraine to neighboring countries, the Vietnamese Foreign Ministry said Wednesday. Among them, 140 citizens live in Poland and are currently in Warsaw, 70 to Romania, and about 30 to Hungary. About 220 citizens went to Moldova and will then depart to Romania. There are about 7,000 Vietnamese people in Ukraine, said Foreign Ministry spokesperson of Foreign Ministry Le Thi Tu Hang on March 1st. Last week, Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh signed a public telegram ordering relevant ministries and agencies to ensure the highest safety and security for lives, property, as well as legitimate interests of Vietnamese citizens and entities in Ukraine. Pham ordered the Foreign Ministry to draw a plan to provide security and safety and evacuate Vietnamese citizens and members of diplomatic missions if necessary, and provide them with food and other necessities.
Stay tuned, more updates around the ASEAN region after this short break.
Mr. Bawal, may ibis ka, oh. Asan? It's a prank! Okay lang manakot! Pero kung mananakot ka para sa boto, bawal yan!
Ayon sa Omnibus Election Code, threats, intimidation, terrorism, use of fraudulent device or other forms of coercion is an election offense.
Sino kausap mo? Makaalis na nga, sa iba na lang mananakot. Mr. Pwede! Mr. Pwede! May malaking ibis sa likod mo! Nox! Babawi ka pa! Di mo ako maiisahan! Ako si Mr. Bawal na nagpapaalala sa inyo na ang pananakot para sa boto. Ibis! Hoy! Bawal yan!
The Philippines joined other nations in calling for a halt to the ongoing violence in Ukraine. This is according to Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles, and he also is the acting presidential spokesperson of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, gave assurance also that mitigating measures and contingency plans will be put in place as part of the government's proactive response to the Russia and Ukraine war. Let's take a look.
The palace joins the country and the entire world in praying for an early and peaceful resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. We reiterate the position of the Philippines that war benefits no one and that it exacts a tragic, bloody toll on the lives of innocent men, women, and children in the areas of conflict. The conflict in Ukraine has economic, trade, and human resource implications for our country and for our people. As we monitor the current situation, every Filipino has the right to know what the government is doing to prepare for any eventuality. President Rodrigo Roa Duterte has given assurances that mitigating measures and contingency plans will be in place as part of the government's proactive response to the conflict in Ukraine. For this reason, the President convened yesterday, March 1, 2022, several members of his cabinet, along with top officials of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police, and other high-ranking officials to discuss possible scenarios should the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict continue and escalate. In this regard, the President has approved the recommendations of his economic team to strengthen our domestic economy, stabilize food prices, provide social protection, and explore diplomatic channels to help resolve the conflict. As to food stability, the Chief Executive approved the recommendations of the Department of Agriculture to boost local food production. Kasama na rito ang pagpapataas ng produksyon ng pagkain sa pamamagitan ng pagpapatupad ng Plant Part 2. Pagpapataas ng rice buffer stock na hindi bababa sa 30 araw. Pamamahagi ng tulong pinansyal sa ating mga nagsasaka ng palay at pagtugon sa tumataas na presyo ng abono tulad ng pagbibigay ng fertilizer subsidy at market access through bilateral discussions sa fertilizer-producing countries. Inaprubahan din ng Pangulo ang rekomendasyon ng Department of Agriculture sa pamamahagi ng fuel discount vouchers sa mga magsasaka at mga mangingisda bilang tugon sa tumataas na presyo ng langis.
Government intervention powers or authority to intervene when there is a spike and or prolonged increase of prices of oil products as part of the government's medium-term measures. Let's listen in.
On the supply of oil, the President approved the recommendations of the Department of Energy to implement the 2.5 billion Pantawid Pasada and the 500 million fuel discount program for farmers and fisherfolk. The DOE will continue to monitor the sufficiency in supply and quality and will make sure there will be no short selling. For the medium term, we call on Congress to review the oil deregulation law, particularly provisions on unbundling the price and the inclusion of the minimum inventory requirements in the law, as well as giving the government intervention powers or authority to intervene when there is a spike and or prolonged increase of prices of oil products. Also, part of our medium-term measures are building of the strategic petroleum reserve infrastructure ensuring minimum inventory requirements, and advocating for energy conservation and efficiency. The President further approved the recommendations of the Department of Trade and Industry to accelerate renewable energy adoption, support investments in utility-scale battery storage to maximize utilization of renewable energy sources, support investments in modern storage facilities for oil and grains to increase within the border holding capacity, and empower the private sector to help in strategic stockpiling. Meanwhile, the AFP and the PNP gave assurances that our troops and our military and police assets stand ready and that they have respective contingencies prepared for any developments. In conclusion, we appeal for an immediate end to the unnecessary loss of life and call on the states involved to forge an accord that can help prevent a conflagration that could engulf a world still struggling to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. The course of history and the fate of our world will be shaped by the decisions that will be made by its leaders. We are one in prayer, together with all peace-loving citizens, that they be guided by wisdom and a genuine desire to save lives, establish harmony among neighboring nations, and forge a just and lasting peace for humanity.
The Philippines Energy Department admitted the country is at the mercy of global price movements, and this would be affected with the continuing Russia and Ukraine conflict. Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi said that while the Philippines primarily gets its crude oil requirements from the Middle East, the impact of the Ukraine crisis will be felt in the international oil markets and thus have a direct impact on oil prices in the Philippines. And however, he assured Filipinos of the sufficiency of the country's oil supplies amid the continuing Russia and Ukraine tensions. Take a look.
Ito pong sa Russia-Ukraine conflict, this added problems to the increasing price already in the world market. At saka ngayon nga po, it's hitting near $100 per barrel. So yan po ang ating binabantayang mabuti ngayon. And sabi nga po ninyo, yung tungkol sa excise tax, ang naging position po natin yan as early as last year. Sinasabi nga po natin to give us the power to suspend excise tax when an abnormal situation is happening. At saka ngayon po, humingi po kami ng authority na yun. But unfortunately, we need to amend law for us to be able to do that. The Congress have already discussed that, and that napending lang po sa Senado. So yun po ang sitwasyon. As far as what is happening now, wala naman po kakulangan ng supply dito sa ating bansa. Ang panawagan lang po natin ay tayo po ay to conserve the use maging marunong po tayo sa paggamit ng petrolyo, at hindi lang ng petrolyo, pati na po ng elektrisidad, at kahit sa wala pa pong kakulangan. Ang magiging mangyayari lang po dito, yung pong pagtaas ng presyo. And pagka umabot po ito ng dati natin in 2014, I think, ang presyo po ay sumabot ng mga $110 plus. And the looks of it, kung magiging prolong po yung gera between Russia and Ukraine, talaga pong tataas pa po ang petrolyo.
In other news, deaths due to coronary heart disease have increased by 28% for the first 10 months of 2021 as compared to the same period in 2020. This is according to a health expert. In a televised public briefing, Philippine Heart Association President Dr. Gilbert Villela defined the upturn as alarming and frightening. Let's listen in.
Taas ng 28%. Nakakagulat at nakakatakot. Halos 30%. At remember, ito ay nangyari during the pandemic. So ibig sabihin, may epekto talaga ang pandemic sa cardiovascular disease. Dahil siguro dahil sa yung panahon na yon, takot ang mga tao na pumunta sa ospital at sa mga nagtatago sila. Kaya nagtiis ng mga nararamdaman, hindi bumibili ng gamot, kaya tumaas ang cardiovascular disease. Yung anxiety and stress and mental stress, it creates a massive systemic inflammation. Ang vascular system, yung mga ugat natin, causing obstruction. Yung mga taong may sakit sa puso, pwedeng matulak sa heart attack. Yung naman mga taong walang sakit sa puso, pwede magkasakit sa puso. Bukod doon, it creates a behavior that is unfriendly to the cardiovascular health. Like for example, dadadala sila ng kain ng mga bawal pagkain. Comfort food, ika nga. Pero nakabalita ka naman ng comfort food na gulay o lumpiang sariwa. Ang comfort food nila yung mamantika, deep fried, maalat, and soft and so on. So it definitely adds to the problem.
And the news continues here in ASEAN in Focus. We will be back right after this.
Karapatan natin lahat na iboto ang karapat-dapat! Tama! Lahat ng Pilipino pwedeng bumoto!
Kung rehistrado ka,
Ha?
ang lahat ng Pilipinong rehistrado lamang ang maaaring bumoto. 1 taon ang ibinibigay ng Commission on Elections para magparehistro ang mga Pilipinong boboto sa darating na eleksyon. Kailangan gawin ito para maiwasan ang tinatawag na flying voters. Teka, lahat ba kayo nagparehistro na?
Opo! Rehistrado na kami lahat!
Bakit tahimik ka? Hindi ka nakapagrehistro, no?
Nakakalimutan ko.
Ay, hindi ka pwedeng bumoto. Mabuti pa, bumili ka na lang ng balot.
Pagka kami pa bumili ng balot, pwede na kami bumoto.
Hindi, pero mabubusog ka. Para sa karagdagang kaalaman, makipag-ugnayan lang sa pinakamalapit na barangay o bisitahin ang COMELEC website.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba, sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Welcome back to the program. Coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19 vaccination cards are no longer required in entering malls in Alert Level 1 areas. This is according to the official of the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or DILG, on Thursday. DILG Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya said vaccination cards are only required in establishments considered as 3Cs, or closed, crowded, close contact areas. Malaya, however, acknowledged that some malls in Alert Level 1 areas are still requiring people to present their vaccination cards before they are allowed to enter. Malaya assured that the DILG will discuss the matter with the local government units, or LGUs. The Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, or AITF, EID, placed the National Capital Region and 38 other areas under Alert Level 1 from March 1 to March 15. Under Alert Level 1, the AITF said there are no restrictions in terms of indoor and outdoor capacities. Everyone can undertake intrazonal and interzonal travel without regard to age and even comorbidities. And all establishments and persons or activities are likewise allowed to operate, to work, or be undertaken at total on-site or venue seating capacity, provided these are consistent with minimum public health standards. Meanwhile, face-to-face classes for primary education shall be subject to prior approval of the Office of the President.
And here's what they call the fitness of the future. It uses electricity and it's a lot more intense than your average workout. Here's Crystal Mapa trying out the EMS at a gym in Bangkok.
How's your fitness journey going on so far? I am here in Bangkok, Thailand to try a new workout. Let's go and check it out.
This fitness center in Bangkok is offering EMS technology to lose body fat and muscle building in just 25 minutes of workout. EMS stands for Electric Muscle Stimulation and is a total body workout that uses impulse currents. According to the fitness center website, the EMS full body workout activates 90% of muscles at the same time during each contraction, therefore speeds up stronger and faster result. It also mentioned that EMS workout is 15 times more efficient than training in a conventional gym. The workout is customizable depending on customer's objective. It is advisable for people who are busy as the duration of a complete workout is only 25 minutes. And this is also for people who want to achieve muscle building and rehab exercises for injury and back pain. In the first session, it started with a briefing about EMS and filling out a health form for the instructor to know the customer's fitness goals. Next is to gear up. A special conductive undersuit is provided that the trainer will fit in the electrode vest. I am now ready for the workout. Honestly, I'm a little bit nervous, but I gave it a try anyway. The trainer led me through a series of exercises which were designed to stimulate different muscle groups. It looks easy, but electrical pulses made it challenging, even in a short period of time. And in 25 minutes, we're done. A post-workout using the EMS machine is done to cool down the muscles. So, how's your fitness journey going on right now? Indeed, there are countless ways to achieve whatever health goals we may have promised to achieve this year. Let's all stay active and healthy for our life goals, friends, and family. Reporting from Bangkok, Thailand, I am Crystal Mapa, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Crystal, for that wonderful report. I wish I could have the time to do that workout also. How about you, Esther?
Yes, we have to go together with Crystal so that we can also be fit like her.
Yes, I'm
this
hoping.
weekend or maybe next week.
Maybe next week. Let's find our schedule. We're going to look for our open schedule. Thank you, Esther, for having us. And that's the latest news in ASEAN region. Thank you for watching and thank you for joining us. Once again, this is Faye Bartek from your EBC Thailand Bureau.
And that's all we have for you for today. Happy weekend, everyone. This is Esther Odanga from Thailand Bureau. And we'll live
in interesting times.
times.